All right, so have you ever gotten sucked into those Wired autocomplete interview videos?
Oh, yeah.
Like, you go in thinking it's just going to be like random trivia, right?
Yeah.
But then you end up watching like 10 in a row because they're strangely compelling.
Totally. You always end up learning something kind of quirky.
Yeah, even with someone like Kamala Harris.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Those seemingly off-the-cuff moments
Yeah.
are actually like a carefully crafted PR move,
It's,
especially for a politician.
it's like the name of the game these days.
Exactly.
Okay, so today we're doing a deep dive into this Wired interview with Kamala Harris.
Okay.
We've got some excerpts from this article that really break down the whole thing.
Cool.
And it's interesting because on the surface, it's just Harris, answering Google searches. But there's this whole other layer of strategy going on.
Yeah, this wasn't just a random appearance.
Right.
Like the article even mentioned she's been kind of dodging traditional interviews lately.
Which makes this choice even more interesting.
For sure. This is about controlling the narrative.
Yeah.
100%.
And it makes you think about how traditional media is kind of losing its appeal.
Especially for politicians.
Especially with those gotcha questions they
Oh,
leave.
totally, yeah. Yeah, it's way less appealing when you're trying to stay on message.
So then you've got platforms like Wired with this massive YouTube audience, right?
Massive. Over 11 million subscribers, which is huge for reaching, especially those younger voters.
Right, exactly.
The politicians are always trying to get on their side.
It's like holding a rally in the digital age. But instead of shaking hands, you're dropping truth bombs about, well, littering in this case.
And even that little detail about littering, right?
Yeah.
That tells you something about the strategy at play here.
Okay.
It's not just about answering the question. It's a calculated moment of, like, self-disclosure. You know what I mean?
Oh, totally.
Humanizing.
Right. It's like, hey, I may be the vice president, but I also care about keeping our planet clean.
Exactly.
I can relate to that.
And that's the point, right? It's about creating these parasocial relationships with viewers.
They get to see that she's just like us.
Exactly. Well, kind of like us.
Okay, so the article points out this interesting thing about how Harris's interview was different from your typical Wired guest.
Oh, right.
Like, you usually see actors or musicians.
Right, yeah.
And hers was definitely more policy-focused.
Which makes sense.
Totally, given her position.
Right.
But even then, it wasn't all serious. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
There were still those moments of
Personality.
humor, personality. Yeah, like what about her joke about the Super Bowl?
Oh, yeah, that was good. Or even just her shout out to the Golden State Warriors.
Oh, yeah.
Little things like that.
And those weren't just like offhand comments. They were very much calculated to show
Different sides of her.
different facets, right?
Exactly. Making her more relatable.
Less like a robot, more like a human.
Yeah. Which, honestly, in politics, that's huge.
You got to seem approachable,
Huge.
authentic,
It's all about that.
especially in a setting that is still very much controlled, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's a carefully constructed image.
But it works.
It does. It's very effective.
It's fascinating how these seemingly small details contribute to the bigger picture.
Exactly. And that's what makes this type of strategic communication so effective in the digital age.
It's not about delivering long-winded speeches anymore. It's about crafting these bite-sized moments that resonate with online audiences.
And because these Wired interviews are so popular and well-regarded, it lends a certain credibility to her message.
Viewers might be more receptive to what she's saying because it's presented in this engaging, non-confrontational format.
Precisely. It's subtle but incredibly powerful. She's leveraging the platform's existing credibility to enhance her own image.
Which makes me think back to the article's suggestion about Harris going on Hot Ones next.
Ah, yes, the infamous Hot Wings Challenge. That would certainly be a bold move.
Right. I mean, on the one hand, it's a massively popular show, and you get to see a different side of celebrities, that vulnerability as they sweat and struggle through increasingly spicy wings.
It's true. It plays on that desire for authenticity, for unscripted moments. But for a politician, particularly someone in Harris's position, it could be a risky gamble.
Totally. One wrong move, one awkward grimace, and it becomes an instant meme, potentially overshadowing any substantive message she was trying to convey.
Exactly. The Wired interview provided a controlled environment, a safe space to project a carefully crafted image. Hot Ones throws all that out the window.
So you're saying sticking with Wired was the safer, smarter play?
In this instance, absolutely. It aligned with her overall strategy of controlled messaging and targeted audience engagement. Hot ones might be a better fit for a different kind of politician, perhaps someone who wants to embrace the chaos and isn't afraid of a little hot sauce.
Okay, so circling back to the Wired interview, what's the big takeaway here for you, the listener? Why should you care about a politician acing a 10-minute YouTube appearance?
Because it highlights a fundamental shift in how we consume information and how influence is wielded in the digital age. Politicians are no longer just policymakers, they're content creators, vying for your attention in an increasingly crowded online landscape.
It's like the old saying goes, it's not always what you say, but how you say it. And now it's also about where you choose to say it.
Exactly. And as savvy consumers of information, we need to be aware of these tactics. It's easy to get caught up in the entertainment value, the personality, the carefully curated moments.
But we can't let those things overshadow the critical need for substance and accountability.
Precisely.
Yeah.
So as you continue to explore the world around you, remember to look beyond the surface. Question the motivations, consider the context, and always strive to gather information from diverse sources.
It's about becoming more discerning consumers of information, both online and offline. It's almost like we need to be like way more aware as viewers now.
Oh, totally. It's like you can't just take things at face value anymore.
Yeah.
Especially with something like this Wired interview. Like, yeah, it's fun and engaging,
Mm-hmm.
but we also got to remember it is still a very meticulously crafted piece of political strategy.
100%.
You know-
It does make you wonder, though, if this just makes it easier for politicians to dodge those tougher questions.
Oh, for sure.
Like, Harris got to share what she thinks about certain things, but we didn't hear much about the actual challenges,
Exactly.
her administration's facing.
It's very surface level.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's controlled.
I personally love those Wired interviews,
Oh, they're fun.
but can they really replace a good old-fashioned hard-hitting interview on a news program?
Right. And that's the question, isn't it? It doesn't have to be one or the other.
Oh, right.
Ideally, you'd have both.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's something to think about,
Totally.
How do we balance this need for snackable content
Yeah.
with actual in-depth reporting?
It's just so easy to get caught up in the moment, right? Harris seems super likable in that video.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's totally by design.
Yeah, and it works.
It does. So where does this leave us? What's the big takeaway you want our listeners to walk away with today?
I think it really just comes down to being a critical consumer of information, especially online.
Yeah.
Always ask yourself, who's giving me this information? What are their motivations? And am I getting the full story here?
It's easy to forget that even something that seems lighthearted can still have this whole strategy behind it.
100%. There's always more to uncover when you start digging a little deeper.
And that's what we love about these deep dives. Always more to uncover. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.